to It's Your Future. I'm Ada Harden, Volunteer Resource Specialist for AISD. It's Your Future is a program for AISD students and others who want to learn more about specific career fields. People from all walks of life will be sharing some of their experiences with you here on this program, and we hope that our guest will help you become more aware of what you can do now to plan for the kind of future you want. You know, from time to time, we need someone to talk to and converse with about various futures. And listening to people who have made it and how they shaped their lives will help you learn how to plan for yours. Our guest today is Mr. Tommy Wyatt, publisher of the Dillinger newspaper. Thank you, Mr. Wyatt, for coming to be on our show.
Thank you, Ms. Harden, for inviting me.
We know how busy you are, and we're just honored that you took the time out to come and share with us some of the experiences that you've had with your newspaper. And I understand that before that you had a magazine that you published, the Black Register. Would you just share all of these things with us right now? It's just so exciting to have you here.
Yeah. Well, before we started a company in 1969 called the Black Register Publishing Company. And our purpose at that time was to put out a directory of black-owned and managed businesses in the city. And it was an alphabetical listing, a classified listing of black businesses, much like your yellow pages in telephone book. We call them the hello pages, that's what we call them at the time. And we're still producing that publication after about 15 years. It's an annual publication and it's being produced each year. And in 1973, we branched off into another project called the Villager newspaper.
I see, I see. And what problems did you encounter with being the first? Was this the first black newspaper that ever was here in Austin?
In Austin, no. I mean, we're down a long list of black newspapers in Austin. In fact, at the time we started there, the Capital City Argus was being published and has been published in Austin since 56, 55, 56. The late Dr. Givens started the Capital City Argus, and it was being produced at that time. But we thought that there was a point of view that was not being expressed, and we thought that we could represent that point of view. So we were new, but no, Austin has had a long history of black newspapers.
I see, I see. And your actual started with going out and getting people to put ads or run ads in your paper and find out exactly what the black community wanted to have in the way of a newspaper in their areas. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, what happened, you know, as I traveled around the country and around the state, I saw other cities that had newspapers. And each one of those papers had something I thought was important and unique. And our paper, I think, is a combination of probably about 10 newspapers. We took an idea from this one, an idea from that one, and we put them all together to come up with our paper. The research we did primarily was just talking to the community people, find out what news they would like to see covered and the types of news and where they could get that information. And we found out from the community of people that there was no place to get the bulk of black-oriented news. The only thing we got covered in our daily papers on television and radio was usually violent crime that happened in our community. And we all know that the black community is like any other community. We have weddings, and and we have anniversaries, and we have 50 years wedding anniversary celebrations, and birthday parties, and all the things that make up a community go on in our community. But for the most part, they don't ever get outside of our community. And many times they're not even shared within our community. And our idea was just to produce a vehicle that where we could communicate with each other in our community so people would know exactly what their neighbors were doing.
And did you have or encounter any problems? How did you deal with being the small, growing, hopefully, black paper? Did you have any problems with the larger newspapers here?
Well, initially we didn't have a problem with the larger newspapers. I mean, they didn't really take us serious, so that was no problem there. Our problem, of course, was convincing. All newspapers, of course, are supported by advertising dollars. And our biggest problem was to convince the potential advertisers that investing for advertising our paper was a good sound investment. That was the biggest problem we had. We started off by producing 1,000 copies of sample copy that we put out around the community to let people get an idea of what kind of news and how we would present their news in a paper that we thought was an attractive format, in a good news format. And after we put the first issue out, we went back and took that issue to potential advertisers and said, support us in this effort because we think that this is what the community would like to see happen, and we think this will benefit your business by advertising. And our first month, we sold advertising at half price, at half our published rate for the first month. And that, from that point on, we've been selling advertising.
Well, you said they didn't take you seriously. Exactly. What did you mean by that?
Well, first of all, it didn't take us seriously because we even today we still hear some of the same statements. You know, when I went to the bank downtown, to my banker, and asked for a loan in order to establish this newspaper, you know, my banker just almost fell out of his chair laughing, you know. And the first thing he said was there was no need for a black-oriented newspaper in the community because Austin, at that time, Austin was considerably smaller than this today, and they felt that any news that the black community needed could be gotten out of the daily paper, and so therefore there was no need for a special paper. That also, then members of the black community felt that, again, you're talking about the early 70s, people thought at that time that a black-oriented newspaper could be a divisive element in the community, you know, rather than blacks and whites and browns getting together, that you could drive a wedge again by having black-oriented news as opposed to white-oriented news. So these were some of the concerns that the people downtown had, and also some concerns in the community. You know, and that's why I felt that there was a way the news had to be presented in a way that it would not be divisive.
I see. And it is very, very, very good and very, very informative. You know, you mentioned how long has this been? How long has the paper been being published? And you are still doing the publishing as well as the editing of it?
Yes, I am. Okay, May 13th, 1983 will be our 10th anniversary.
I see.
And we hope to have a great big 10th anniversary celebration. We're preparing for one now, and all the details have not been worked out, but they will be forthcoming. Yes, I am the publisher and the editor, and you know, for most of the time we've had the paper, I've been a delivery boy and a janitor and the chief advertiser, salesman, and so forth. We now operate with a full-time staff of 5 people.
Good.
And then we have about 3 or 4 part-time people that help us on the paper. So we've expanded our staff, and hopefully within the next year or so we'll be able to bring in an editor, and I can, you know, get rid of that responsibility and then concentrate on the publishing and the financial aspects of the paper.
And you're going to be having to expand in terms of space too, aren't you?
We're cramped right now. We're on top of each other because we expanded our staff by 3 people last year, and the building that we moved into 2 years ago was just adequate enough to house our staff at that time. So we were not equipped to bring 3 more staff people, full-time staff people in the office. We're working with it, but it's a tight situation right now.
Yeah, well, you've come a long way since the Black Register. A lot of people aren't familiar with the Black Register. Can you kind of give us a little information on that?
Yeah, well, the Black Register, as I said earlier, is a directory of black-owned and managed businesses in the community. That is still one of our most popular publications. I mean, there is not a day that passes that someone doesn't call our office either about a copy of the Black Register or about information that's contained in that book. As people are trying to find different services, and we have a wide range of services. We have everything from carpenters, bookkeepers, construction contractors, mechanics. I mean, any kind of businesses that black people are in the community, they're listed in this book. And many times people won't need special services, you know. And if you're black and you want a hairdresser, I mean, there are certain hairdressers you're going to go to, and so people call us many times if they're new in town and want to know where they can give them the name of some hairdressers, and we try to give them 3 or 4 names. This book is also used by businesses and political people who are trying to find minority contractors. As you know, that's a big thing now.
Yes.
It's trying to put out business for minority contractors. This is the only publication in the city of Austin where you'll find those black contractors listed.
I see. And are these, do you sell these, or do you have subscriptions for these?
That book is primarily distributed through our advertisers themselves. Every advertiser, we give them the opportunity to take as many copies as they need to distribute to their customers. The rest of them we distribute through our office. And if they come to our office to get the book, it costs them $1 a copy. If they get it from an advertiser, they're free. So that's why we encourage them to go to the advertiser and get the book rather than come to us.
And how regularly are these printed?
It's an annual publication.
Annually.
Come out once a year.
Annually. Well, before we came on the air, we talked about some things, and in terms of how you actually, were started into. I understand that you were an insurance agent or had an insurance business before you did the newspaper. Well, why did you make that transition, and how did that happen?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when I got out of college, I went to college. I went to Bishop College, of course, and I majored in business administration. And when I got out of college, I went to work for an insurance company. And I got drafted during those days. In the 60s, everybody got drafted, so I spent 2 years in the Army. And I came back out, and I was transferred to Austin with the Atlanta Life Insurance Company here in Austin. I was a staff manager, and I had supervision of 7 people on my staff. And I worked with them until 1966. At that time, I went out and formed an agency. MJ Andy Anderson and myself formed an agency called Anderson Wyatt Insurance Agency.
Oh, yes.
And we, at that time, we were specialized in life and health insurance. I stayed with, and I had that partnership until '69. At that time, I went on my own and I formed the T.L. Wyatt Insurance Agency, which was an independent insurance agency. We did that until '73, when we decided to go into newspaper business. Now, another thing that pushed me into the newspaper business, I would say pushed into it, I ran for county commissioner in 1970, as many people don't know. Particularly the new people in town don't know that. People always ask me when I'm running for political office. I did in 1970, ran for county commissioner, and lost in a runoff in a very close race. It was a special election. I ran again in 1972. I lost again by less than 500 votes in a very close election. I contributed much of that problem to the fact that we did not have a way to communicate with our constituents. As you know, county commissioner is a precinct race, and you waste a lot of money going on television and going in the daily newspaper and so forth. And when you need to communicate with this small group of people, and I felt that we had a strong newspaper, community paper in our community. We could have effectively communicated with those people, and we possibly could have won that race. And I said sometimes it's a blessing in disguise I didn't win it, because if I had won it, I probably would have not formed a newspaper.
And I noticed that during the time of for elections and what have you, you have so many ads in your, in your paper. I suspect that's very profitable to you.
Well, it is very profitable, but it's also it's more than the profit angle on that. It also gives you an understanding of what the broader community thinks of the service that we provide, and also of our influence in the community. And let's face it, a newspaper, an effective newspaper, is a very powerful vehicle in any community. We all know that newspapers, television, and radios are some of our most powerful instruments in our community. And when politicians come over and feel that it's important for their election to have a chance, that they have an ad in our paper saying something for the influence they feel our paper has. And yes, this year was probably our biggest year as for political advertising, this last council race, in which we reached our maximum newspaper, 22 pages. And our paper is an average 12-page paper. And so that those other 10 pages were picked up solely from political advertising. Another thing that we do with our paper in the political races is that we give an individual interview to every candidate in the race, regardless of what office they're running for, regardless of whether they are considered a serious candidate or not so serious candidate, whether they buy a line of advertising space with us or not. We give every candidate a personal interview, and we write up their interviews as a personal. We don't lump races together, and we take a separate misguided statement, this personal statement. Every person has it. And that was the other reason why our paper expanded to the size. But I was gratified in the fact that the candidates themselves supported us, because we are a free paper, and we depend on advertising. So in order for us to produce those other 10 pages was a considerable expense. When without the advertising dollars, it would have been quite a financial burden for us to do that.
And I can very well relate to that too, because so you had a tremendous amount of coverage for all the elections, and from all of them. And we had so many of them. Seemed like
right. 23 candidates. A lot of people try to wade through. The other thing, Ada, I'd like to say that I was gratified with is that many of the candidates took excerpts from the interviews they had in our paper and used them as part of the advertising campaign programs, and I was gratified with that.
Right. Well, I think that the Villager has really grown. Really, I've watched it for the last 10 years that you all have been in existence, and I'm very, very proud of it. I'm very proud that it's in our neighborhood, and you're doing an excellent job with that. We talked earlier, too, about the fact that you, in your studying, you did not study journalism in school, and Here we try to, talk to boys and girls about some of the basic skills and studies that they need to look at when they're, getting ready to go into various careers. And it seems kind of odd or strange that you didn't do that, but yet you have such a, effective paper. Do you have any explanation for that?
Well, yes, I do. Actually, I studied business administration. First of all, a good business background is a criteria for any business, whether it's newspaper business or whatever. You have to be able to understand the financial arrangements and how it works and read a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. Otherwise you're not in business very long. That, I think, was very helpful. Now, from the editorial standpoint, we were short in that area from the editorial standpoint. And I would say to any person who think now they want to be in journalism, would be to take a journalism course that leads to a degree in journalism. But if you don't do that, take some good English courses. A good background in English literature, and these sort of things would be very helpful also. We did what you call an on-the-job training program, is that we hired people who were trained at the time we started. We hired people who were trained to come in and assist us in developing a newspaper for about the first year. And I looked over their shoulders and I learned from them on how to do it. So when they left the paper, I was able to run it by myself. But I also want to say that the majority of the black-owned newspapers in the country today are not owned by journalists.
Oh,
They're funeral home directors, they're physicians, they're dentists, and the other business people in the community. All, mind you, have a good business background, but not necessarily a journalism background.
I see. So it is important, though, however, for boys and girls or students to, who might be interested in going into this particular career, to look at those.
Of course, it's important because everybody won't have an opportunity, as I did, to start their own paper. No one would have given me a job as a writer for any paper because I had no background, and no education as far as a writer. So nobody would have given me a job as a writer. You see, but most people don't have an opportunity to start their own publication, so they end up working for someone else, and they have to start off as a writer.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you said that you hire people, with a little background, some background in journalism,
Right.
and that's a good start and a good point for people or students who might be interested in doing something of that nature. By the fact that you came into publications, I should say, the way that you did, then a lot of times we talk about role models here on the show. Would there have been anybody way back in your life that might have contributed to the fact that you ended up in this career?
Oh yes, I mean I grew up with Everett Magazine, as most of us did. Everett Magazine and the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Kansas City Call. I mean, these were the papers that we read religiously. We went to our library; they were in our libraries. And I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and of course there were no black-owned newspapers there. And if I wanted to read about black people, I had to either read an Everett Magazine, Pittsburgh Courier, Kansas City Call. And so certainly those are the papers that I look forward to seeing each and every week, and reading each and every week. And of course, Everett Magazine on a monthly basis. So those, sure, I would have to say they were greatly influenced, the fact that I had a desire to do this, because that was a void I felt in Austin with not being able to get. But I also think that one of the problems we always had when I read those papers, I could never read anything about anybody from Lubbock in those papers. You see? That's the problem we had in Austin. I read papers, but there was never anybody from Austin in the papers. Even when blacks appeared in the daily paper, they were always from Chicago, from New York, from California. And now so many people in Austin who make a tremendous contribution on this town. And as you know, blacks get left out of history books. And if we don't document it through our newspapers and our magazine, we look back 20 years from today and we won't find us. Ada Harden will not be found unless she's preserved on videotape that you're doing now, or we preserve in our newspaper and our magazines.
And I know way back when you first started the Villinger, you had a spotlight of blacks, of various blacks who were first. Do you still do that, or do you have so many firsts now until it's
we don't do that anymore? Well,
I
I think the first thing has become a hindrance rather than we don't do the first anymore. We do still spotlight blacks who are in influential positions. We don't necessarily want to say they're first, because we hope at some point, we'd have gotten past that first syndrome.
Right.
Because if people are still making first 1983, that means we haven't made very much progress. But we still have people who are moving up into very influential positions. We want to highlight those people, not only for that person themselves, but also for the community who needs to interact with that agency or the services they provide, to know where they are and who they are.
We've talked, and I realize all these strengths that you have, and I can't even imagine you having any weaknesses. A person that has, started out with a paper like you did, and I think that's just so wonderful. I really do. And
I have quite a few, but I'm not going to tell you what they are.
Not on the air anyway.
All right.
Okay, we'll jump to something else then. We talked earlier, too, about the Newsmakers Luncheon. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Newsmaker Luncheon is a new idea we came with the Villager, and we call it the Villager Newsmaker Luncheon, and it's held every Wednesday, and right now we're doing it at Phases Restaurant. And the idea is every publication, whether it be a newspaper, magazine, or television, and radio station, have to have a gimmick. You know, you have to have something to keep people attuned to your publication, to keep that in the forefront. We thought also that there is no forum in East Austin for people to come and talk about the issues of the day. You know, and our city leaders, they go to downtown Rotary Club, they go to Chamber of Commerce, they go to the JC's, and they go to all these clubs downtown, but never do they come in our community and talk about the issues that we're concerned about. You know, we're as concerned as the rest of the community about all the issues that affect our community. And those places they go in are private clubs also. They're private organizations. The Newsmaker Luncheon is open to the public. Anybody, whether they live in East Austin, West Austin, South Austin, wherever, can come in. We invite these same people, leaders in our community, to talk about the issues that we're concerned about. We've had city council, mayoral candidates over. We've had Place 6 candidates over. We've had Superintendent Ellis over. John Ellis was over last week. We've had people from the Texas Education Agency over. Dr. Hill, the Deputy Director of Commissioner, Texas Education Commission, came over. We've had people who are in positions and who are working on some very critical problems and programs for our state and for our city. And we want those people to come in and hear firsthand some of the concerns our community has. And they don't always hear those concerns. And I think last week, Dr. Ellis was very concerned in some of the questions that he was asked, and he was very, I think, surprised. Those questions have been asked many times of people who work for the AISD, but they have never gotten to Dr. Ellis himself. And we thought it was good for him to hear those questions firsthand, and also for the community to hear his response to those questions that they were proposing.
And so the basic thing is that the key to communication is, communicating.
Communicating, that's right. And so we write. Now, another thing Newsmaker Luncheon does for us, of course, as the gimmick thing, is that, first of all, we have a first-hand news story that we can't be scooped by anybody in town, whether it be TV, radio, whatever. We set it up, and we have first-hand news story. And we've come out with some very innocent information from the leaders who've come over and spoken with us, and we write that luncheon up every week in our newspaper. So people who can't come can have the benefit to know what happened at the luncheon.
That sounds wonderful, too. We also talk a lot, too, on this program about accomplishments and having done what you've done, and just sitting here listening to all of the things that you have accomplished with your publications. You have, I would suspect that would be one of your great accomplishments, right?
The newspaper?
Yeah.
Well, right now, but we're looking at some others that we're striving for. Right now, I'm very gratified at the progress the village has made. We got a long ways to go, but I think we're moving in the right direction, yes.
And too, also, I want to mention the fact that on a number of occasions, you have gone into the schools for me and for the volunteer program for AISD to talk to the students about the career of being in publications. And we're very grateful for that. We really appreciate it, and I know that the students have learned a lot by your having gone to be with them and speak with them and all that. Do you have?
We really see that as an extension of our community service, however, because we sometimes people don't come alive as real live individuals. You see them and you read about them and so forth, but they don't come alive. And I think also one of the problems we have many times as black people is we isolate ourselves in our own community, and we don't go out enough and expose ourselves to the broad community. And so we try not only in schools, but in any place we're invited to come, to go and participate, we'll do that.
Right, and I also appreciate, too, the fact that you do cover activities that do go on in our schools.
Right.
You've had some excellent coverage for Black History Month, and I want to say thank you. You publish a calendar for all the activities that will be taking place within that month's time for within our school district, and the district certainly do appreciate that and everything. Let me ask you another little question. What would be some of your advice? What would be your advice for students who might be planning to go into publications for a career? Just give us a few little basic things that you think kids need to look at.
You know, first thing I'll say right now for students who think they want to be a writer is to start writing. I mean, don't worry about how it looks and how it sounds. Put it on paper, and you refine it as you go along. Most people are so afraid of picking up a pen or going to typewriter and writing. And I have a 15-year-old son who's been writing since he was 8 years old. I've published his articles in my paper since he was 8. Oh. And if you go back and look at the articles he's published since from 8 to 10 to 12 to 14, you can see a dramatic growth pattern there. And has been able to conceptualize what he's trying to do. That's the first thing I do. Because first of all, what they can find out, they may not want to be writers. Because writing is a very hard job. It's not easy. You know, and if they start there, they may decide that I really don't want to do this, you know. That's the first thing. And then if there is a strong desire, of course, to pay particular attention to English literature and English. It's a strong background in English is very important. And then, of course, you go into other journalism field when they get to college. And write for the school newspaper, you know, just anything, just write. You know, if you don't publish it anywhere, write it, put it in your diary, just write it, you know.
Just write,
that's
the
right.
key.
Yeah, that's the key to it.
The key is just writing. Well, I really do appreciate you having taken time out, and I know that you are extremely busy, Tommy, with your newspaper and all the other things that you all are doing there at the Villinger. I have sat back and watched you grow over the last 10 years, and I think that is very commendable. And you're doing an excellent job, and we hope that you will be extremely successful in your rebuilding. I mean, you know, you're growing and your building of your new building that we were talking about.
Yeah, well, we're looking at that also. But I want to say, you know, that our growth has been because of tremendous support we got in this community, and we continue to receive in this community. And without that, we couldn't do anything. And although we want to do it, you can't do it unless you have the support of the community.
Right, absolutely, absolutely, and I do agree with that. Well, thank you so very much for coming and being with us. I see it's about time for us to go, and we appreciate you being here with us. And I just want to remind the boys and girls and students out there that to become publisher or lawyer or doctor or anything, legislator, whatever you might want to be, it takes work. It's not easy, but it's your future, and it's worth working for.